So have you ever felt like you had a fantastic idea and you have played it out over in your mind and you know how to make it work? Unfortunately, you have a decision maker who has not said yes. Can you relate to that? If you're an entrepreneur, you have clients that you're trying to sell to. If you're on a team and you have these great ideas that you want to take to your manager or your supervisor and they're still not buying it. And you're like, I don't know why they won't say yes. Well, today we're going to learn from a man who, if we do the things that he did, we'll sit back and watch our decision maker say yes. So who are we talking about today? We're talking about this man by the name of Nehemiah. And if you know anything about Nehemiah, he was the cupbearer for the king, and Nehemiah was in the palace and he heard news of his folks, some remnant few that was back in Jerusalem, and he heard that they were in great affliction, great shame. The walls in Jerusalem were torn down, the gates were burned, and Nehemiah began to pray. The scripture says that he wept, he mourned, he fasted, and he prayed. And as he went through that process, he was able to exchange his perspective for God's perspective. And so he prayed to God and he wanted God to have influence on the king. And the king was his decision maker. So what can we learn from Nehemiah? Well, if we go through the book, the second chapter of Nehemiah, the 1st through the 9th verse, I'm going to pull out a few things that Nehemiah did that we can do today. So if you have some clients that you're trying to sell them on something, do these things. If you're on a team and you have a manager or a supervisor that you're trying to push some ideas to and they still haven't said yes, do these things. Okay? So what happened? So in the second verse it says, and it came to pass in the month Nisan in the 20th year of Artaxerxes the king, that wine was before him, and I took up the wine and gave it to the king. Now I had been 4 times sad in his presence. So here's the first thing. When I read this, I said, hold on. Now I had not been before times sad in his presence. So the first thing that I learned from this is Nehemiah is saying he was always happy. Some of us, we need to just learn how to be happy. He's saying that I've never been before the king not sad. So sometimes we just need to learn how to be happy. Why is that important? So that whenever we are sad, our decision maker will be interested and concerned about what's going on with you. You see, some of us, you're walking around, you're going to work and you're mumbling and you're griping about everything and you're complaining about everything. And you have decision makers around you and they're looking at you like, well, that's them. I guess they're always that way. But that's not who Nehemiah was. Nehemiah was always happy. Unfortunately, now Nehemiah is sad because of what the news that he's heard about. Why is this important? This gets the king's attention. And when I say gets his attention, a lot of times we need to get people's attention in order for them to help us. But some of us are getting their attention the wrong way. Nehemiah shows us, be happy all the time. However, whenever you get a chance to show that you're not happy, show it. So what happened then? The second thing in the second verse, it says, wherefore the king said unto me, see, he got his attention. The king said unto me, why is thy countenance sad? Seeing thou art not sick, there is nothing else but sorrow of heart. And then he said, then I was very sore afraid. You see, Nehemiah now recognizes, hold on, now I have the king's attention. Ooh, I'm not quite sure I really want it, because he knows that you're normally not sad, but today you're sad. And the king has already identified something's wrong. And the king is saying, you're not sick. And the only thing that it could be is sorrow of heart. What does Nehemiah say unto the king? In the third verse, he said, and said unto the king, let the king live forever. Why should not my countenance be sad when the city, the place of my father's sepulchres, lieth waste, and the gates thereof are consumed with fire? What is Nehemiah doing now? Here's the second thing we need to learn how to do. We need to learn how to connect our pain to purpose. That's what he was doing. Nehemiah was telling the king, right now I'm sad. My countenance is sad. I'm upset. I'm disappointed. I'm in pain. Why? Because of the purpose. Because of my community back home lied waste. Because my father's sculptures in the temple and all of that is lying in waste. I am disappointed. You see, a lot of us, we have some pain in our life. We have some disappointment in our life. And unfortunately, we don't connect that to purpose. We don't connect it back to our mission. We don't connect it back to our commitment. That's what Nehemiah was doing. So right now, if you have some disappointments and you're not happy, connect it to a purposeful place. Because if it's just because it's somebody else's fault that what somebody did to you, your decision maker is not concerned about that. Nehemiah's decision maker was truly, truly concerned because he could see the passion. He could see the care and concern that Nehemiah had for his family and his folks and their reputation back home. So then what did the king say? In the 4th verse, the king said unto me, for what doest thou make requests? Oh, I love it. Now the king's saying, so what do you want from me? What can I do for you? You see, that's where you want your decision maker to be. You want them to be asking you so that they can help you. That is key right there. If your decision maker if you have not convinced them to a point that the pain and the disappointment that you have is connected to a purpose, they're not concerned about trying to help you. But if you make that connection, they're going to be like the king. What doest thou make request? What do you want from me? And then Nehemiah said, so I prayed to God of heaven. And this is what I love. Before he answered the king, he asked God. So when people say, well, how can I help you? Don't talk to them first. Talk to God. The scripture says, make thy requests known to God before you make them known unto man. And that's what I love that Nehemiah did. He's right there before the king. The king is looking at him, asking him a question, and Nehemiah knows, hold on, I know you're asking me a question, but give me just a second because I got to consult with God. You see, that's what we need to learn how to do. When people are asking us who can help us, when they're asking us, what can I do for you? What can I do for you? Before you respond, do what Nehemiah did. He asked God before he answered. And then after he answered, after he asked God, the 5th verse he says, I said unto the king, if it please the king, and if thy servant has found favor in thy sight, that thou wouldest send me unto Judah, unto the city of my father's sculptures, that I may rebuild it. You see, before he answered the king, God gave him an answer. And when God gave him an answer, he gave the exact answer that God gave him. He said, first of all, if it pleased the king. He's telling the king, it's not about me, if it pleases you, right? And then he says, thy servant. I'm still in my place. Hey, I serve you. I'm still in that place. And then he said, send me to Judah, not just for me, but send me there because I want to fix my father's sculptures. You see, Nehemiah constantly communicated that it's not about him. If you want your decision maker to say yes, you have to continue to remind yourself that it's not about you. Oh my goodness, that is good stuff. And then in the 6th verse, and he said, and the king said unto me, with the queen sitting beside him. I love this. Now the king and the queen is in this conversation. He said, for how long shalt thy journey be? And when wilt thou return? So it pleased the king to send me, and I set him a time. You see, I love this because now the king is letting Nehemiah know that, hey, me and my queen, we discussed this and we agreed to allow you to go. Now, before you go, we need to know one thing. How long you going to be? When you plan on coming back? And why is that important? Because remember, he's their servant. They're allowing their servant to leave. So the other thing that we need to learn how to do, so when somebody asks us and they want to try to help us and they're asking us what we need and we talk to God and we do everything, give people a timeline. That is so important. Give people a timeline. Don't just say, I don't know how long it's going to be. You know what that says to people? That you really haven't processed it and thought it out. Nehemiah gave him a timeline. As a matter of fact, I think Nehemiah beat his timeline. I don't know exactly what timeline he gave him, but guess what? They did it in 52 days. So Nehemiah was not playing. And so if you want your decision maker to say yes, you can't be playing. You got to think through these things. And then the 7th verse, he says, moreover, I said unto the king, if it please the king, let letters be given to me, to the governors beyond the rivers, that they may convey me over till I come unto Judah. And then he said, and a letter unto Asaph, the keeper of the king's forest, that he may give me timber to make the beams for the gates of the palace, which appertain to the house, and for the wall of the city, and for the house that I shall enter into. And the king granted me according to the good hand of my God upon me. Oh my goodness. So the last thing in this process, if we do these things and watch our decision makers say yes, and once they do say yes, the last thing is don't be afraid to ask for more. At first Nehemiah was asking for like, hey, I just want to be able I just need some leave time. And the king's like, sure, how much you need? Well, I need a couple months. King's like, sure. And Nehemiah came back and said, oh yeah, by the way, will you give me a letter to be given to the governor? In so many words, give me a passport. And the king's like, sure. And then Nehemiah's like, hold on. Yeah, one more thing. We're going to need some timber. We're going to need, as a matter of fact, we're going to need some other things. And the king's like, okay. You see, we can't be afraid. And some of us are so afraid to ask for more. I mean, this is gold. This is truly gold. The first thing is we got to learn how to be happy. Even though we're dealing with a situation who is dire straits, right? I mean, that was bad news. But guess what? Nehemiah was so trained and so conditioned to always be happy. Now one thing came that really, he was not focused. He was not himself. Guess what? His being happy all the time and now he's sad is what got the king's attention. How about you? Are you always negative and downtrodden and disappointed and no one knows when something is going on in your life? As a matter of fact, they think something's always going on in your life? Flip the script on that. Learn how to be happy. I mean, just truly be happy so that when you do get bad news and someone asks you, and not just anyone, but the people who can literally help you, let them know what's going on, right? And remind yourself that it's not about you. That's what Nehemiah did. And when they began to ask, when the king asked them, he connected his pain to purpose. You see, that's the other piece. So when people do inquire about what's going on with you, don't just tell them, oh man, I'm just sad, I'm just down. Okay, and they'll move on. But if you tell them, you know what, man, I'm disappointed because I'm trying to do this job over here. I'm trying to do this work, but every time, man, I keep running into something, and they'll ask, so what is it connected? And you got to connect your pain to purpose. Because if your pain is not connected to purpose, no one is going to want to help you. It has to be some purpose behind it. And Nehemiah connected his sadness. He connected his disappointment. He connected his frustration to what was happening back in his homeland. And the king recognized, hold on, this guy is always, man, this must really mean the world to him to see him in this state of mind. And I'm telling you, your decision maker, when they can see that, wow, this is something that's really pressing you and you're really trying to solve something, they'll step in, they'll want to help you. Now, here's the other piece. When your decision maker comes along and say, hey, what can I do? What can I do to help you? What do you want from me? Before you ask them, make sure you ask God. I mean, that's just plain. Ask God first and let God give you the vision. Let God give you the words to respond, because that's what Nehemiah did. He said, I inquired of the Lord first. And when he inquired of the Lord, then God gave him the exact things to ask for. And after he did that, the king said, well, how long is it going to take you? Hey, you got to have a timeline. You just can't be randomly just saying it's going to take me. No, you need to have a game plan. Have a game plan. And then once you have a game plan, Don't be afraid to ask for more. Because today in that moment you say, well, this is all I need. But once you start the process, you may realize, you know what, I need something else. And that's what Nehemiah did. He continued to ask for more. He asked for a passport. He asked for some products. And he even asked for some protection because they sent armies with him. Why? Nehemiah knew that he was going to need all of those things. So listen, I'm telling you, if we do these things that identified that Nehemiah did, we can sit, now I'm not going to say we can sit back, but we can watch our decision makers say yes. Because at the end of the day, God has a plan for you. If you're an entrepreneur, God has a plan for you, for your clients. But guess what? You can't help your clients until you allow God to help you. If you're a manager or supervisor, or even if you're someone who has managers and supervisors, and you're trying to do great things for your organization, you're trying to do great things for the people that your organization serves, and man, they just will not buy into the ideas that you have. Do these things that Nehemiah did. And I promise you, when we do these things, we will be able to watch our decision maker say yes. So let's go do these things and watch our decision makers say yes. I look forward to seeing you on the next video.